In this video, I'll be answering the first evaluation question. In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of a real media product? I'll start off with the conventions that I've used. So the first thing that I think I've used is the construction of narrative. And I'll be using the 1 hour photo trailer to compare mine to. So I've come up with 4 crucial stages within the narrative at which events occur. It's similar to Todorow's theory of narrative, which is on the screen now. Except it's slightly more detailed and more specific to trailers. Obviously, Todorow's theory of narrative suggests that the equilibrium is restored at the end of a piece of narrative, but obviously a trailer, you're not going to see the end of the film, otherwise that'd be giving it away. So you have to sort of pay to see the end of the trailer, just pay to see the equilibrium being restored. So my narrative structure is more specific to a trailer. So the first stage I've come up with is called suspicious behaviour. Pretty self-explanatory. It's where the villain is acting suspiciously. In my trailer, this stage happens when we see a close-up of Thomas, who's the main painter guy, looking at Jane, who is his victim. This not only does he look suspicious, his facial expression suspicious, but the camera angle and the lighting also add to the creepiness. For the lighting, I actually added an effect from iMovie called hard light, which is like a high contrast effect, so the shadows become darker and the light areas become lighter, and it just gives the shot more of a sort of sinister, gives the character more sinister feel. In the 1 hour photo trailer, the suspicious behaviour stage happens when the titling comes up on the screen and says, "He knows your name." And this is followed by like a close-up, which is similar to the close-up in my trailer of the villain. And again, this angle that it's at is quite suggestive. It sort of tells you that there's something not right about this guy. The next stage is where a problem is established for the audience. So the victim won't necessarily know there's a problem, but the audience do. In my trailer, this is in the shop scene where the audience realise that Thomas, who's the main character, is following Jane, who is the woman. In 1 hour photo, this stage happens when the titling on the screen says, "He knows where you live." It then goes on to show the villain entering his victim's house. And this stage is like a progression from the first stage. So the villains go from just appearing suspicious to actually acting upon the suspicions that we may have. The next stage is where the problem is acknowledged by the victim. In my trailer, this is where Jane, the female character, turns around when she's walking back from the shop and she realises that someone is following her. In 1 hour photo, this stage happens when the villain approaches one of his victims, who happens to be the father of the family that he's been watching, and tells him that he has a nice house and a nice family. And obviously this is where the victim realises that this guy has been inside his house and knows his family, so they acknowledge the problem. The final stage is the intensification of the problem. This is sort of where we realise to what extent the villains have gone to. In my trailer, this would be when we see Thomas entering his victim's, well, what we can only assume is his victim's house. And in 1 hour photo, this is when we see this huge wall just of this one particular family's photos, and it just shows like the extent of their problem. And this stage actually coincides with a sudden stop in the pace of editing and in the music in both trailers. This sort of just adds suspense for the audience who have just found out like the new levels that the villain in the trailer has gone to. I think here it's important to note that there is a difference between narrative structure and plot. So in both trailers, the villain is seen entering their victim's house, but they occur at different stages in both trailers. Because obviously I'm not going to use the same narrative as another film. I'll just use the conventional narrative structure to sort of structure mine like other thriller trailers. And just coming back to the editing and music, this obviously links to all stages in the narrative structure, because as the narrative builds, so does the music and so does the editing pace. So at the start of a trailer, you'll get much slower editing and slower music, but at the end, the cuts will be a lot faster and the music will be a lot more intense and faster as well. I think every thriller trailer that I've watched does this, and I'd be surprised if there was any that didn't. So obviously I did stick to this. I think it'd be a convention that would be difficult not to use because it seems so vital in creating all the excitement. So the next convention that I've used is the studio and end credits. So there will often be a set of credits at the end of a trailer, and then also the production company logos near the start somewhere. I think every trailer I've watched of every single genre ever has some sort of credits because they have to give credit to the actors, directors, and so on. The Misery and Fatal Attraction trailers are slightly older. I think they're from 1987 and 1990, so they are a bit different in that they have less people credited. They don't have a website, and they don't have a coming soon page either. On my coming soon page, I also have a hashtag, which is a sort of tag that's linked to the social networking site Twitter. But obviously Twitter's only become popular in the past few years, so only like modern day trailers would use this as like a marketing technique. The third convention that I've used is to do with the iconography and stereotypes from the thriller genre. So firstly, the colour red. The colour red represents death, danger, love sometimes, especially in like stalker films, or obsession maybe is more fitting, and possibly blood, but I'll come back to the use of blood later. Usually most of the red colour comes from just the text within the trailer, not necessarily the images themselves, so like the title or the credits. But there is sometimes like a splash of red, like so a red wall or red lighting or something like that. I've obviously followed this convention as my title is red, and I've also got a few red scenes in there too. I've used red primarily because of the blood that I've used in the trailer as well, which I will come back to later, but also because of the love that Thomas has for his victim.